Today we will take a look at events that happened in 2007 in the city of San Antonio, Texas. The 25-year-old Amber Belkin worked in a video game store. On January 29, 2007, she was found with no signs of life in the back of the store when the manager came to check on her, as he found out that she didn't open the store on time. It took authorities over a year to arrest the suspect. Amber Marie Belkin was born on December 6, 1981, in San Antonio. She was the only child in the family. Her parents described her as very energetic, ambitious, and responsible. Amber worked as a manager in a video game store for almost 3 years, and on January 29th, he had yet another shift. The store was scheduled to be opened for customers at 10 a.m., but she always came to work at about 9 a.m. Before opening the store, she would take the money from the safe left from yesterday and take it to the bank next door. It was done so that large amounts of money would not accumulate in the store. On that January day, Amber, as always, came to work at about 9 a.m. The store where she worked was part of a large international chain of stores. However, on that day, Amber didn't open the store at 10 a.m., which became known a little later. Somewhere around noon, the regional manager contacted the manager of another store, located in San Antonio, and asked him to take a drive and find out why Amber hadn't deposited the money and why the store was still not open. Amber also didn't answer phone calls, which aroused suspicion and concern. The name of the employee who went to check up on Amber is Mariano Rivera. Having arrived at the location, he saw a white car that looked similar to the one Amber had. The store entrance was locked, and looking through the glass, River didn't see anybody. He knocked at the door a few times, but no one came out, so he left. About 2 hours later, he returned to look around for the second time. Looking through the store's windows, Rivera saw Amber's assistant, Brandon. He knocked at the door, and having heard him, Brandon let him in. Rivera asked if Brandon had seen Amber, to which he replied that he hadn't seen her. According to him, he himself just arrived and noticed something strange in the store. There were some money, CDs, and work-related documents lying on the floor. Rivera went into the back room where he made a horrifying discovery. The lifeless body of Amber was lying on the floor face down with a plastic bag over her head. Later, forensic experts will determine the cause of her death to be strangulation. Rivera immediately called 911, and soon the store was cordoned off by the police. Detectives discovered that Amber didn't deliver money to the bank like she would on any other day. However, the safe in the store was empty, which suggested that there had been a robbery that supposedly went wrong. It is possible that the robbers stumbled upon Amber and decided to eliminate her as a witness. Judging from Amber's schedule, it was determined that the crime was committed between 9 and 10 a.m. Sadly, there were no surveillance cameras in the store, which could have been a huge help to the investigation, and so the police had to look for other clues. First of all, detectives questioned Mariano Rivera and Brandon Beal, as it was they who found the body. They told how and under what circumstances they arrived at the store and how they discovered that Amber was dead. Store management told the authorities that around $2,000 were missing from the safe, as well as a few video game CDs and 3 or 4 PlayStation consoles. Total store damages amounted to $6,000. The police asked the employees of the establishments located next to the store, but they didn't get the expected results. No one had seen or heard anything. While the police were busy at the crime scene, the news about what happened spread throughout San Antonio, and the parking lot in front of the store was filled with mass media representatives. Amber's father, Randy Belkin, heard about the incident on the news. When he saw the address of the store where the crime occurred, he immediately got into his car and drove there. Upon arrival, he spoke with a detective who sadly informed him that the victim of the crime was his daughter. This event divided Randy's life into before and after. Soon, Amber's mother, Lelia, arrived at the store as well. Looking into her husband's eyes, she understood that their only child was no longer with them. Upon examining the crime scene, detectives came to the conclusion that the criminal left the store through the back door, which is why no one saw him. But the main conclusion was that the criminal was familiar with the store schedule. He knew that the money was taken to the bank between 9 and 10 a.m., and he also knew that there were no surveillance cameras in this particular store. This is something that only a former or current employee of the company could know. The first person who was seriously suspected of being involved in the crime was Brandon Beal, Amber's assistant. He knew all the ins and outs of the store, and he was already inside when the manager from another location came to check on Amber's well-being. When Brandon arrived at work, he knew that the store should have been open a few hours ago, but for some reason it was still closed. Despite all of this, he opened the door with his key, came inside, and locked it again. He saw that there were signs of struggle inside, but for some reason he didn't go into the back room to see if Amber was there and if she was all right. Having spoken with the company management, detectives found out that Amber, being a store manager, was unhappy with Brandon's work and wanted him fired. She told her mother that Brandon has a very short temper and does not perform his job duties well enough. But could disagreement with Amber push Brandon to commit a crime? Detectives began looking for an answer to this question. Having received a warrant, officers searched Brandon's car and home, hoping to find the CDs and PlayStation consoles that were stolen from the store. However, none of the above was found. During the questioning, Brandon stated that he arrived at the store at about 2 p.m. He himself was surprised that the store was still closed. According to him, he opened the door using his key, as he didn't think that Amber could have been inside. Seeing the mess, he thought that the store had been robbed, and then the manager from another location came just a few minutes later. Brandon also confessed that he didn't know about Amber's desire to fire him, but didn't deny that they often disagreed on certain matters. His girlfriend and parents confirmed his alibi for the morning when the crime was committed, and when he successfully passed a lie detector, he was excluded from the suspect list. Almost a month has passed since Amber died, and the police didn't have any new clues. The detectives were afraid that the case would remain unsolved. Amber's parents reached out to the public through mass media, asking anyone who knew anything about the incident to report it. A reward of $100,000 was offered for information that would lead to the arrest, $95,000 of which were provided by Amber's employer. Flyers with her were put up throughout the entire city of San Antonio. However, regardless of all of this, there was no progress over the next 7 months, until one day a police station received a very important call. The man who called has introduced himself as Joe and told the detective in charge of Amber's case that he knows who is responsible for her death. Joe, or whoever it was, told the detective that Amber was strangled by 22-year-old Giovanni Rivera. When the detective asked why he thought so, Joe replied that he and Giovanni used to work for the same company as Amber. On the day of the crime, Giovanni called him and asked if he wanted to participate in a robbery. The store choice was not random. Giovanni wanted to rob that exact store where Amber worked, as it had no surveillance cameras. The detective asked Joe if he accepted Giovanni's offer and participated in the robbery, to which Joe responded negatively. If everything that has been said is true, then the initial assumption of the police that the crime was committed by someone who was very familiar with the store schedule was right. The detective asked Joe to come to the police station and make an official statement. He refused, but he probably understood that they would find him sooner or later. So, 2 days later, he came to the police station, where he, once again, stated that he didn't participate in the robbery. During the questioning, Joe described in detail how Giovanni Rivera first mentioned his intention to rob a store. According to Joe, Giovanni never said he was going to hurt Amber, but about a month after her death and after the case received wide publicity in the mass media, he confessed that Amber's death was his doing. Joe said that he didn't make a call right away because he feared for his safety.
I just was in shock when he told me that. I was like, wow. I was scared too because I was in a car alone with him thinking I freaked out. What's he going to do to me,
What do you think? Could the $100,000 reward that he could get for providing important information make him more brave and serve as an incentive to go to the police? Share your opinion on that matter in the comments. Joe himself claimed that the feeling of guilt started to overweigh the feeling of fear, and that's why he decided to make a call. Although the testimony alone was not enough to obtain an arrest warrant for Giovanni Rivera, it didn't stop the detective from calling him to the police station for questioning. It is also worth noting that Giovanni Rivera is not in any way related to Mariano Rivera, the manager who found the body. They are simply namesakes. During a conversation with the detective, Rivera accused Joe of lying. According to him, he wasn't involved in any crimes. At some point, he refused to answer any more questions, and the police had to let him go. While the officers thought about how they could bring him to justice, Giovanni moved to Laredo, Texas, with his family. This is the city, located on the border with Mexico. There was a huge chance that he would cross the border and get lost, but in the current situation, without strong evidence, detectives couldn't do anything, and the case was stalled for months once again. Fortunately, however, help came unexpectedly. At the end of June 2008, almost a year and a half after Amber's death, Giovanni's wife, Veronica, called the police. She said that her husband attacked her, threatening her and the kids with a pistol, and just as importantly, she also said that he was the one who took the life of Amber Belkin. The detective in charge of the case went to Laredo to speak with Veronica. Having met in person, she said that she made a bad choice when she married Giovanni. She got pregnant by him when she was still in school, and her family insisted they get married. Giovanni began showing his true face after the wedding. He was a tyrant. According to Veronica, if he wanted intimacy and she didn't, he tied her up with duct tape. She also said that when Giovanni was called into a police station for the first time, he returned home distressed and immediately told her that they needed to move to Laredo. That same day, they took everything necessary and left San Antonio. Veronica understood that if her husband was clean before the law, they would not move. One time, she gathered the courage to ask Giovanni if he was related to the death of Amber Belkin, to which Giovanni replied that he took her life. Veronica was shocked and asked him why he did it. He said that he did it because their family needed money to pay rent. When Veronica asked for divorce, Giovanni put her in a car and drove to a secluded place. There he took out a pistol and told her to get in the back seat. He followed her, and while threatening her, forced her to please him. Then he took her out of the car, gave her the gun, and told her to finish him. Veronica said that she would not do it, to which Giovanni replied that if she would not shoot, he would deal with her, her kids, and even her relatives. Veronica begged him to think about what would happen to their kids if they were left without parents. It seemed like it worked, and both of them returned home the same evening. But in the morning, Giovanni said that he would simply disappear. When he drove off, Veronica called the police right away and told them about her husband's confession. Now, the police had the testimony of two witnesses, one of whom was Giovanni Rivera's wife. Detectives received a warrant for his arrest, but at that time, Rivera managed to cross the border and get lost in Mexico. Another 6 weeks passed before he was found and arrested in the home of a relative. Mexico's authorities agreed to his extradition to the USA only on the condition that the prosecutors would not pursue the death penalty for him. These conditions were agreed upon. When all the documents were prepared, Giovanni Rivera was given to the USA's authorities. His arrest was a relief to Amber's parents. They were glad that the death of their daughter would not remain unpunished. On August 7, 2008, Rivera was interrogated. In contrast to the previous conversation, the officers had his wife's testimony. When informed of this, he confessed to everything. He said that as soon as Amber opened the store's door, he followed her, having put on gloves and a mask. He was very surprised when Amber recognized him. He told her that he's having financial problems and that he needs money very badly, and he made her open the safe. At some point, Amber tried to reach the phone, and then he had to tie her hands with duct tape. She panicked and started screaming. At that moment, according to Rivera, he put his hand over her mouth and asked her to keep quiet. Amber tried to break away, and then he realized that he had passed the point of no return. He took a plastic bag that was lying nearby and cut off her oxygen. When she stopped breathing, he took the money, a few CDs, and a few PlayStation consoles and then drove off in his car, which was parked behind the store. Rivera's lawyer started pushing for a plea deal. It took the district attorney's office almost a year and a half to accept this agreement, which did not include a life sentence without parole. Considering the risks of the jury trial and the fact that appeals can take years to review, prosecutors ultimately agreed that the plea deal was the best possible outcome for the Belkin family. In April 2010, as a result of a deal, Giovanni Rivera was given a life sentence. He must spend 30 years in prison before he will be allowed to apply for parole. Relatives and friends of Amber promised to do everything in their power to make sure he never walks free. The authorities did not say whether the $100,000 reward, promised for providing help in searching for the perpetrator, was paid to anyone.